Hello and welcome back. Anyone who has ever driven along a highway, an expressway, or what have you, have seen how all the vehicles that are in your lane are all moving in the same direction that you are. And the ones that are ahead and the ones that are behind. And this is true all the time, except when you're passing one of those vehicles. For the time that you're passing that other vehicle, to you and to any occupant of your car, that vehicle appears to be moving backwards. And then when you resume your right lane or whatever, everything returns back to normal. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind there for now. Well, the Earth held a very particular distinction for 14 centuries. It was the center of the universe, and this was based on the theories of one Gaius Ptolemaicus, who was a first century astronomer. And of course he probably was making some reasonable deductions based on the quality and quantity of knowledge at that time. But what he said was that the Earth, because it wasn't moving, had to be stationary, and that all the other objects in the heavens, the moon, the sun, the planets, and the stars, even though at that time they had no idea what stars were, but those lights up there, all orbited the Earth in perfect circles. And they had some pretty rigorous math to substantiate that idea. Until one day, somebody discovered in the observation of Mars that that planet, when it's moving across the sky, at certain times it would stop, move in the other direction for a bit, and then resume its original motion. And this kind of threatened the perfect circles idea. And they did something about it. But we'll just depart from that again and go to another revelation, and that is what we find in a book by the MIT scholar George Santayana. And the title of the book is The Trial of Galileo, and this is what took place, I think, in 1636. And it's, everybody's heard about it, but it was in reading that book that I understood that the church already knew that the Earth orbited the sun. Cardinal Roberto Bellarmino in 1619 told them, our astronomers are telling us that this is right, but we don't want to spring it on the public too suddenly. So in your dialogue on the two world systems, just treat them as theories. Don't state either one as, or especially your new idea, as fact. And so that he was issued a license. And it turns out that the actual grievance that the church had against Mr. Galileo was not that the contents of the book, but the fact that he published it in Italian, the language of the common people, and not the usual Latin that scholars used at that time. Well, in the book, Mr. Santayana also calls attention to the Colombe Society and other factions of the church that were trying to suppress this new information. And the term he used was preserving the phenomena. And that means that to uphold the church's position that Scripture explains natural law, and never mind this crazy new stuff. Well, returning to Mr. Ptolemy's astronomers, here they have Mars moving in what we call epicycles. Now, the perfect circles are still there. I mean, the orbits are still perfectly circular, but now it's not the planets that move in these circular orbits. Instead, there's an invisible point that orbits the Earth along these perfectly circular paths. And the planets revolve around these invisible points. And here's a picture of what I'm talking about. And this solution was widely accepted and became part of the dogma of Ptolemaic astronomy. And so excited were these people that they had preserved the phenomena that they failed to notice that the fact that if epicycles were true, then they wouldn't just be happening every once in a while, but instead you'd be seeing this. So there the fraud is exposed to any thinking person. But when you're trying to save your credibility, I mean, who cares about truth? Anything that'll do, just tell the people anything and insist that it's true. Well, now that brings us to the real point here, and that is that it's been well documented throughout history the influence, the often harmful influence that organized religion has had over the masses. And we've also seen politics assume some of these very same methods. And now the scientific community is also getting into the act, and their lead item is the Big Bang Theory. The idea that the entire universe was created by a cataclysmic event that originated with a particle that was many millions of times smaller than the nucleus of an atom, and from this suddenly burst all the millions and billions of galaxies, each with their billions and billions of stars and everything else, which is a pack of pseudo-scientific nonsense. See, in the 1920s, when Edwin Hubble detected the red shift, he didn't ascribe any cause to it. And there is an explanation for it that doesn't require a big bang. But someone along the line decided that, well, that means that all those far-flung galaxies, billions of light years away, are flying away from us. And that the universe is expanding. And what will happen, ultimately, is one of two things. Either the universe will reverse this movement and collapse inward on itself, implode, in other words, or it will just go on expanding forever, for all eternity. Well, that's pretty absurd when you come to think of it, because the Big Bang Theory describes an event. And as an event, it's finite, which means that there'd have to be a bunch of energy behind it. A whole lot, necessarily, but a finite amount, that is the fixed amount of energy. And as soon as the explosion occurred, well, that energy would begin to dissipate. And sometime in the distant, far-flung future, well, they'd run out of energy and it would start collapsing back in on itself. But that the second alternative is even considered is absurd. A finite event can produce an infinite effect? Not really. And the eminent Dr. Stephen Hawking, who must be admired for overcoming his severe physical handicaps, but whose thinking might be a little off-center in regard to some other things, decided to investigate this Big Bang Theory. And he started with the little particle and didn't get very far because he determined that the whole process would stop after a millionth of a second unless there was a certain particle present necessary to the continuation. Well, he invented one, and he called it the instanton. And what is unique about the instanton is that nobody ever saw or heard of it before or since. So it's another epicycle, if you will. And of course, we'll also comment on Dr. Hawking's theory about black holes, which is also nonsense. But anyway, there is one question that I would challenge any Big Banger to answer. And that is, where's the epicenter? Where was this little particle in the first place. Because it really looks like, owing to the fact that all these galaxies that seem to be flying away from us at light speed are all uniform distances from us in every direction. Which seems to suggest that, oh, hey, the Earth is back at the center of the universe again. No one will ever be able to point to this epicenter. Well, because, other explosions have taken place, like Krakatoa, the Vesuvius, and those horrible events at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, each of those sites are what we call the epicenter. We can point to a place and say, well, there's where this happened, and there's where the other thing happened. But no one at all will ever, I doubt, will ever dare to attempt citing this epicenter of this pseudoscientific nonsense called the Big Bang. But the most important thing to consider is that it stands deductive logic on its ear. Now, all scientific investigation begins at the same point, and this doesn't matter whether it's in an expensive and expansive laboratory peopled by engineers and scientists in white coats, or just you and me trying to figure out a problem. There's one starting point for all scientific investigation, and that is the compelling cause. And the compelling cause answers the question, why do I need to know this? What is the benefit or the danger contained in this information? Now, I'd like to give you an example of how this works out. And I'd like to recall a past life going back about 5.5 million years ago, when I may have been a hunter-gatherer. Of course, I can't prove it, but you can't disprove it either. And so I'll just recall things as best I can. Well, me and my clan and I, had been sitting out a violent storm, and there's thunder in the sky and flashes of bright whatever they are, and it seemed like whoever was up there running the show was pissed off about something, and so we had to hide in the cave to stay dry and safe. But maybe it was just an emotional outburst, because everything was okay. After a while it stopped raining and the sky stopped making noise, and we stopped seeing these flashes of light. So then we went back out there looking for a caribou or a deer or an antelope or something for dinner, and of course digging up roots and tubers and herbs and all that stuff. And as we were passing by a forest, we noticed this bright glow in among the trees. And of course, this is pretty spooky, because we'd never seen anything like this before. I mean, the only thing we knew was the sun. This big fire in the sky comes up every day. That keeps us pretty warm. Otherwise, we have to bundle up with animal skins and sleep close together so that we can keep warm. And so we kind of inched over in the direction that this glow was coming from, and when we got to where we could see it, it turned out to be a tree, and the tree was blazing away. Of course, we didn't know it had been hit by lightning, but oh, it was pretty. Yellow and blue, and as we got closer, of course, pretty spooky. We'd have to inch closer, and as we did, we saw that. Hey, it's warm, and the closer you get, the warmer it gets, and then it gets very warm, so we can't get too close to it. But whoa, if we had something like that, that would really take the chill out of the old cave, and maybe one of our party might even suggest that, hey, now we can invent cooking. Of course, that's being silly, but compelling cause. We want that. So, well, how are we going to get it from here to the nearest cave? Well, we got some sticks, some long poles, poke that tree until a hot piece of this burning material comes off, and we'll try finding a flat rock, and we'll put the hot coal on the rock and carry it over to the cave. And of course, we'd have to put little sticks on there to keep the fire going. But once we get there, why, we can set up a little teepee with twigs and tiny little branches until the coals, and we know that from watching the breezes working on the tree and here, now that if you blow on it, it burns better, so once we get a fire going, then there's no problem, because we can keep the fire going and just take a stick and leave it in there until it starts to burn, and then go build a fire someplace else. But it's very, very important to keep that fire going. And I wonder if a tradition that was common to the ancient Greeks, Romans, and is still evident today at the Arlington National Cemetery isn't a primordial recollection of those bygone days. And I'm talking about the eternal flame that has to be kept alive. Maybe that's where it started. But that was really because we didn't know how to make this new thing happen when we wanted, and we didn't know how to make it go away. Of course, we could probably figure out how to make it go away, just let it burn out if nothing else. And so that was the situation for a while. And I think it was one of the members of our party, some kid, and he spotted a muskrat, and he thought, hey, there's dinner. And he didn't have his sling with him, so he just picked up a stone and threw it at the muskrat. Of course, the critter saw the movement and got out of the way, so the stone missed and it hit a boulder. And the kid looks at this boulder, and when the rock hit the boulder, he saw sparks So he gets the stone, he finds the stone and throws it against the boulder a few more times, and every time, sparks. Well, the sparks that he was seeing were just like the sparks he saw when they poke a stick into the central fire, because all these sparks jump up. And he said, I wonder if there's a connection there. Well, after a bunch of experimentation, he gets another stone. Maybe both of them make sparks. And he probably figures out that, well, all right, you take a bunch of dry leaves and crush them up into almost like powder and make a little pile and just keep hitting that stone and throwing sparks onto this little pile of whatever until it catches. And then you blow on it and it ignites. All this is and to demonstrate the compelling cause, because it's something that affects us or can have a very positive effect on us, or unfortunately a very negative effect. So the question arises, why do I need to know about the Big Bang? I mean, how does it affect me personally? How does it affect us as a species in this world, an alien one, by the way? So there's no good answer to that. Whenever you ask that question and get no answer, you're not dealing with facts, you're dealing with ideology. And in this case, it's science become religion. And as proof of that, there are some physicists and astronomers that deny this Big Bang theory. They say it's nonsense. And you know what the scientific community calls these people? Are you ready? It calls them heretics. I thought heresy was kind of outdated, but I guess not. And boy, these mavericks that don't buy the party line, they don't get the big grant dollars. They don't get the research facilities that the big bangers do, because, why, they're spinning a fantasy. Because like the Cold War and a whole bunch of other devious activities that religion and politics play on the masses, it's just theatrics. It's exciting. And what's the message there? The message is nothing, because it's false. And we have to wonder why. Why are they trying to inculcate this bizarre idea into the minds? Well, actually, they're preserving the phenomena again. Creation, which begins with the first verse of Genesis, which states, in the beginning. Well, there's a beginning, all right, but it's not the beginning of the universe. It's a more exciting and in ways more entertaining and informative beginning. And that'll be the subject of the next video. So, glad you could stop by. Love you. And I hope you're going to do what I'm going to do today, and that is have the best day ever. Take care of yourself, and so long for now.